Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't see you. I couldn't see you before, so I turned off my camera.
Yeah. Okay. So, so we're all good now. We all good? Okay. We're all good. Okay, man. Good. That was
Okay. Yeah,
okay. Let's show.
I couldn't see you, so I was like, oh, okay, he's not doing the camera. Okay, so I turned my
Okay. Yeah.
camera off.
Okay. So now we're good. We're gonna do. You know what? We're gonna. How did the rapper say? We're gonna bring it back. We're gonna run it back. We're gonna run it back to the beginning again, which is good because, like I said, I knew nothing about your personal life, which I think makes the person that you are now. I mean, we can say what we want to say, but for me personally, I think the personal that makes everything. And we have, but like I say, a similar background in a sense that I feel like you're the more disciplined me, in the sense of, no, what I mean that in the sense of, and I never could understand how somebody at a younger age could get into motorcycles and not love it forever. I mean, to me, when I got my first motorcycle, that was the first love. That's that first girl that gave you that kiss, and you're like, oh, and you always remembered her. And from then on, it's always motorcycles, and life gets in the way, and then you come back to that love. That's what I feel, and that's what happened to me in my life. And I was telling people, I met you in Valencia, Spain. I was sharing a room with Brandon Posh, broke ass Brandon Posh, and I love Brandon. I say that I love Brandon, and he literally hit me up on Instagram. He goes, hey man, are you gonna be staying anywhere? I go, yeah, man. He goes, oh, can I crash it? We crashed, and he goes, hey man, you know Michael Torres? I go, no. And then I met you at, like I said, the Continental Breakfast. I was eating them at a house and home like I'm known to do. And I think we had breakfast together, I think you were a brave man, had breakfast
Yeah.
with me, and we talked. And I go, this guy's a little different. I mean, but different in a good way. This guy's a little different. I could tell you're disciplined just by talking to you. And then we saw you just at the track, which is great because that's the great part of being not that many African Americans at a predominantly white sport or Spanish, whatever the sport that is that we kind of like, like we kind of bond in a way. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, like, hey,
Hey,
exactly. But
that one guy.
yeah,
I
but
know
we
that guy.
we're always cool though. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I
yeah,
say
no.
motorsports brings out the really good people, could be, and I got to talking. I said, I liked your story. Everywhere I went, you were, and I went to watch, not knowing that you coached Maria, but I went to watch Maria Herrera in that electric race, the Moto E, and you came to watch her. And then your name kept circulating, and then James East from the Ron Haslam Race School hit me up on. He
Mm,
goes, "Hey man, East." He said, "Hey, I think you want to interview this Michael
he's a cool
Torres
guy.
guy. Really interesting." I said, "Okay." And then you know what? I saw you in Moto America DK. I see you, and I go, you know what? That's where I want to be. I'm jealous. I got to interview this guy. So, and I looked your story up, and man, it's so fascinating. First of all, and I don't really say this because I think everybody said it just to say it, but I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for what you did as far as being a member of the military, U.S. Army, and I like it's maybe more, but for as far as I know you can't say it, but for combat duties, you're a paratrooper, and I've seen the medals and everything. So, man, thank you so much for your service and what you did. And now I want to talk about how did you happen to get into motorsports, and how did that lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the story is a little interesting. You always kind of come back to things as you look back at life, right? Things that you're like early influence, and it's not an early influence into motorsports, just action sports in general.
Right.
So, and kind of, as you mentioned, being a paratrooper, and kind of being with other people that are, I think are, some of the best in the world, that I got to work with and luckily learn from, a good portion of my life. That, also, always living on that edge, but also I think that time frame lends itself to where I am now when it comes to motorsports. So maybe not the original interest, right? So, at some point when I was beyond my exposure as a kid, with having a dirt bike, and getting exposure very, very early. I think I got my first road bike. I was already in the military, and it was just something to do.
Right. Right.
But I would say, when it comes to this world of racing specifically, and kind of putting it all together, it really was, let's see, first MotoGP is 2012.
For you.
Yeah, yeah,
And were you big
like
about the bike
live,
then?
yeah, the first live one, right? Yeah, of course. So like first time you get it, it's like you realize like automatically how amazing like the entire the world is, right?
Once you hear the sound and you see them go out in the front straight, your life is changed forever. I mean, that's
yeah,
the way I feel.
yeah. So you immediately kind of figure out. So from my perspective, at that point, I was just in the process of about to move back to Miami from New York. So I kind of established myself in like the sport and kind of fitness world. And I was working in more of a technology consulting and doing some things in also in high performance. But this little aspect of, okay, while I'm doing this other stuff, maybe there's something I can take my coaching experience as, you know, a former track and field coach and kind of working in different parameters with youth, and what I learned there in performance into this motorsports world. So in 2013, moved to 2014, I was I went to the Indianapolis race.
Yes.
And that was the first time I introduced, kind of through some friends. I got some connections with the paddock, and I made some flyers, right? And
How did you miss me during those years? I live in Indy. And you're in the paddock. How did you miss me?
I have no idea. Like at that point, like I knew absolutely zero about like what was actually going on. I mean, the whole point was like, I remember my mechanic that was from Miami we happened to meet there by accident, and that year is when I met Damien Jigaloff. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I met him that same year, and but at that same time, I basically had figured out I was all the experience I had put together from like athletic testing and some other sports science elements, you know, applied into racing where no one was really talking about this stuff. I was like, this is super interesting.
Like what kind of stuff? Like what kind of stuff exactly?
Everything from just standardized testing, you know, from trying to bench, you know, the simple way to explain the whole, you know, impetus is that, like, if you look at most sports here in the United States, like your core sports, you know, like basketball,
football, baseball,
right? Exactly, right. There's this very methodical way, you know, from a little kid, right? You get your pee wee baseball, you got your touch football, and that moves into, you know, your Pop Warner, that moves into your, you know, et cetera, right?
Right.
Well, in motorsports, there really isn't that methodology here, right? Now, this methodology was applied towards this development in Spain and Italy about 15 years ago, and this is what kind of spawned what we now know is, you know, how they've come up with the level of racing. But it's no different than when you look at American sports versus football over there, or soccer as we know it here, right? The difference in a 14-year-old who plays soccer in Europe and a 14-year-old who plays soccer in the United States is really different if the one from the United States isn't entered into an academy level program when they're young. Because if you wait till you're 14 till you start playing highly competitive soccer, the kid who's in Europe, he's been playing that highly competitive soccer since he was like 8 or 9.
No. But how do those academies accelerate that growth? I mean, football as an example, football, soccer as an example. But how does that? Because I was going to ask. That was the question I was going to ask you. What makes the Spaniards so damn good? Because when Kenny Roberts went over there, he introduced them to the knee on the ground and flat tracking, and they took that and they basically beat us at our own game now. And now what they do over there it's just astronomical. Like you see people, and I'm not even casting shade on him at all. And one of your clients actually, and we'll get to that, Sean Dillon Kelly, and he was in Red Bull Rookies Cup. I mean, he was around, I think, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, the best he finished was maybe 6th or 5th, I think. Maybe between there, maybe 5 and 9. Because I watched him every week. I'm a dork. I have nothing else to do. I watched him every week. And then he comes over here, and he's kicking ass in Moto America. I think he was the first one that he got the youngest person to do the double, the Red Bull Rookies Cup, man. He wasn't getting smoked, but he was like mid-pack. I mean, he did good. Hey, don't get me wrong. He did a good job. That's
Well, he was stepping up every year, right? You
NBA
know,
was stepping
and
up, but the Rookies Cup, he just did okay. And then he comes up here, he does great. What is it that makes the Spaniards and the Italians, because of what Rossi did and with his BR Academy? Because I think Rossi saw what the Spaniards are doing. He goes, nah, I got to bring my base and get my boys back, and we got to show them who really runs this. And, you know, I'm just paraphrasing, but and he's what the BR Academy is doing. So what makes those guys so damn good to where when our riders go over there, it's like team.
well, fundamentally, it's the two different things. Just the culture approach to the top end of the sport. One, they have two completely different focuses. So American racing versus, so the American racing system is built on the bikes that you can buy in the store, right?
Okay.
So that's the goal, right? Whereas European racing was built on speed, right? So fundamentally, you had this different training, even philosophy, because the idea that if it's about the bikes you can buy in the store, it's only the last few years that we've had the 300s or even a lower class bike, right? Traditionally, we only had these 600s and 1000s. So in this gap system where the focus is on these 600 and 1000s, what you miss is there's no circuit or Grand Prix style development program for kids because we don't have a reason for it.
Yeah.
Right. So we just don't have it. What we do have is a bunch of kids riding dirt bikes because why? We sell dirt bikes at every level. Right. So
yes, exactly. And it's easier to ride in the dirt than it is to find a place to do road racing.
Right. So this is fundamentally the difference, right?
Okay.
In the not so distant but past, right?
Okay.
So now we start to kind of realize this, and there has to be something to be said, but we kind of, you know, we have a way, we have a pathway that's really different. Now, the other side of it is that feeds into that culture is just the pure systemization of racing, just something that we're trying to address from, you know, the junior level through the junior elite into the professional ranks. So having that step-by-step process is, you've been to Valencia and you've seen the Cuna de Campeonos program.
Yes. I love that.
Right. So those are our partners. So we're essentially modeling and helping and working on expanding their model in different facets around the world. But under that ecosystem, and that's one slice of the pie. Okay. And you know, we have, you know, a couple of different aspects that have to go together, but there's the competition system is one key element to your question, is that we don't develop a kind of step-by-step approach. Now, there are things that are starting to come. As you watched Moto America this year, you saw we had the mini cup.
I thought that was great. Yes.
Right, with the rallies coming out of Italy. Right now, there'll be a lot of discussion about what's the best way to do the younger development. But you know, from a zero, you know, we had nothing a year ago to having something for kids to get into. I think it's a great program, and it gives them opportunity. It gives them exposure. We've got a lot of the older riders who are in Moto America who come down and support the younger kids. So it's a great way of kind of fostering that.
Is a big proponent of that. He comes down. I've seen that. He helps a lot. And I think it helps those kids because they kind of remember the fringes of the Hayden. I think the kids now are so younger, but they at least remember their parents talking about, you know, Roger and Nikki. So when they see Roger coming out, or at least they know the last name Hayden, they go, oh, and he's great with kids. I mean, you can just see that in the look in their eyes when he's teaching them how to do something. So that's got to be a big help.
Yeah. So and there's a lot of, you know, everyone. We've got, you know, Viennese Snipers, who's got a junior academy represented, you know, that was racing in the cup. You've got the American racing team who's got their academy racing in the cup. So, you know, not only is it an opportunity for, you know, local and regional kids to showcase, we've also got, you know, MotoGP connected, you know, programs that are also a part of the system. So all in all, like I said, I'm sure there'll be other programs that will come to support, and other programs that will offer other avenues for racing. But the one that Moto America is running is obviously something that's going to grow, and I think O'Reilly is going to continue to do something, with them. So that opportunity will be good.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing with the Pilots Racing and Developmental School, which I think is great because I was trying to tell my producer, it's great because, I live in Indiana, I live in Indianapolis, and these guys know, surprisingly, they know nothing about racing. My producer is 19. He knows nothing about racing, but I know nothing about his music. So yin and yang. He teaches me about Little Baby, and I teach him about racing and who Rossi is. So when we talked about racing, I was like, the thing about it is there's so many, and I knew this from the interview we did with Moto America, that little bitty 5-minute interview that you did, and you got so much positive messages and feedback from, was from the minority community, or, because you say you want to help South America, North America, mainly, maybe kids who couldn't normally get into racing, because racing is expensive no matter where you go. It's expensive. And for women or girls who want to race or whatever, and like you said, in North America, honestly, it's basically African American. It's like, man, I would like to race, but, and it's great because just a week ago, I had a friend hit me up on a private message. He goes, hey man, how come there's not that many blacks racing? Because they went to Pittsburgh and they saw Moto America in Pittsburgh. He goes, man, we had a great time. The kids had a great time, but why aren't there that many blacks in racing? And I said, and I pulled out of my ass. I said, hey man, it's expensive. I said, racing is expensive. And then when I read what you do or what you're trying to do, and which blew my mind, I am so into that, is that you really want to help more of a minority presence in the racing paddock. So maybe you could explain your Pilots Racing and Developmental School and how you go about doing that, because like I said, racing is expensive across the board.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of kind of verticals or facets, if you want to call it, that are built on our top 10 program. It is expensive, and there is a definite and significant portion of the program that is where there's still costs involved in getting into the program.
Right.
We're trying to develop spec racing and spec training for the most part.
Explain that to somebody who's like my producer Wyatt. He knows nothing. So if he goes, what's spec racing? What's training? I'm sorry, Wyatt.
Yeah.
What's spec racing? I don't understand. What is that? So explain that to him, like in layman's terms.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times when you start off with the kids, just having all on the same little bikes, and they can be down as far as the 50cc mini bikes or pocket bikes.
Okay.
And then we kind of move up to, and that's the engine size. And then we move up into the 110s, and then what something is called Moto 5, which is starting to get into these production bikes built for racing. So similar to what you see with the O'Reillys, but designed more for our training, and starting to prep for those who are looking to move towards the Grand Prix and World Championship style of racing.
Okay.
So the idea of creating a step-by-step system, again, this is something that we are working very hand in hand with Kuna and their architecture. This has been the plan for maybe 3 years now. We've been working alongside, just kind of slowly piecing things together. And part of it is bringing, as you said, the piece of Moto America, we spoke about kind of the physical aspect and mental is more the rider component, right? That rider development side of it. And then you have what I was describing before, which is kind of the competition development side, right? So both of these things kind of have to come together. And our goal is to kind of anchor that with education, link that together with technology, be able to kind of provide a clear pathway. Now, by doing all this and kind of creating this ecosystem, the overarching goal, as you said, by creating this at both the community level, and obviously it has to expand upwards to filter top talent, because this is the world of racing, but getting more people into the sport starts at the community level.
Like
right? And that,
diversity, you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and that starts with when I say not even before the world of racing, but you're talking about uh, bicycle safety. You're talking about community level stuff like that, right? Just introducing people to two wheels as a mode of being more healthy,
And
right?
how to
Then
ride the right way with
and how
protection.
to right and how to ride the right way, how to ride with protection, how to learn these different things. Then it moves into things like mountain biking and training at that level, right? Learning balance and coordination and these different things. And at the same time, there's the mini bike training, and of course we're introducing these things, but when you're talking about coming from zero,
Yes.
right, and
Yes.
where there may be a limited budget, maybe they're not starting with the mini bike training, and because they don't have, that's not what the family is set up to do, right? But there's all these different things that we've done over the years that we know that are very transferable relative to like off the track training, whether that's bicycle training, mountain bike training, things of that nature, that you're developing the same motor skills and the same abilities that you need to transfer onto the track. So maybe you can't afford to get on the track when you're 6 years old because
Right.
your parents can't afford a mini bike racing program, but you can get a mountain bike and start learning how to do these different things. You can start learning how to become an athlete. You can start learning the basics and the fundamentals that are still part of things that we can kind of hopefully have an ecosystem to provide to the communities with.
I think that's beautiful. I saw that when you said you want to include more diversity, and I love that because I think that's what it needs. The sport needs, because there's more of us. It's almost like when I grew up loving rock and roll in my neighborhood, and I was shunned. I always say I was black until fourth grade. Then I got kissed alive too, and then nobody wanted to talk to me anymore. You know what I mean? In my neighborhood, and so, but there was more black rock and roll fans when growing up than they didn't want to admit it in public, but secretly, they said, "Hey man, I like Kiss too, but don't tell nobody." It's like, all right, man, whatever. So I took the arrows for that. But I think that's what it's like in motorsports. I really think that there's more diversity who watches the sports and goes, man, but they don't see people that look like them. So they go, it's a far-fetched dream.
So I also want to make the point though. I think there's an optic in the US that is not the optic from around the world, right?
Yes.
So whereas, yeah, I do believe from the United States, can there be more, quote, diversity within the sport? Can there be more diversity in the international and the MotoGP paddock? Yeah. But the reason there isn't in the MotoGP paddock isn't because of the same reason that there isn't diversity in the way that we speak about it here, right? I think the reason that we don't have the diversity in the MotoGP paddock is more about access,
Yes.
right. It's more about you know and not access in a way of who but just like if you didn't follow, if you weren't a fan, like you wouldn't buy a season VIP, a paddock pass.
Right.
And if you weren't a fan and you didn't buy a season VIP paddock pass, those two dominoes didn't fall, then you wouldn't meet XYZ, who happens to be like, hey, cool, man, you're a cool guy, like, come hang out in box 75 and we'll introduce you to, and those things happen once you're in the paddock. And
yes,
I felt like that's a family within itself, right? Especially in MotoGP.
Yes.
So I just want to say that because I think the optic about diversity is less about, it's more different here than just, and I don't want to put a blanket, and say that it's like that because X, no?
Oh no, I trust you, and I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you pointed out, because there's a big difference between the U.S. or North America and Europe. So I'm glad you said that, and just to clarify that. Thank you for that.
And I'll say, this being, there's a diverse number of people. Of course, the numbers, again, I think now when you look at the U.S., you can chalk up to a number of conversations about it, but I think a lot of that just, it comes down to location is one, and then there's the financial scenario, because even in places where you might have minority community that is middle class or whatever, like if you don't even know about it, you wouldn't spend, there's plenty of middle class, African American families who spend good money on their kids to do other types of sports or other types of
Yes.
activities that are perfectly fine. But I'm just saying that's more than just awareness, right?
Right.
That's so I think it's definitely not, no pun intended, a black and white scenario,
Yes.
right?
Oh, definitely.
Um,
Definitely.
uh, but there is, the opportunity, where, uh, given the choice of teaching a kid how to ride a bicycle properly with safety equipment and the things that could lead into, I think is a lot of things a lot of lessons you can learn, right? Mountain biking. Um,
Like what? Please tell me, because I get scared shitless riding my mountain bike. It really does. It scares me, man. You know what? Riding a mountain bike scares me more street on my motorcycle or riding the street on my road bicycle. Mountain biking scares me like none other. And you can also get eaten by a mountain lion if you live in California. So you got the elements, you got
well,
rocks, and you got wild animals. That's 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out.
I mean, I don't know about the whole mountain lion scenario, but yeah, I mean, when it comes down to, I mean, so here's the deal. From our perspective, training wise,
Okay.
it's super, it's very cool just because of the, sprint mechanics of the heart rate. So, getting the heart rate up and down, um, uh, and also just from a lot of using the body, especially in corners and turns and how you weight yourself, and in those aspects, um, all things that translate to riding a motorcycle, right? So using those same muscles, right, in a training environment, relatively speaking, right? If you think of, from a racer to, riding trails. Now we're not talking about like, Red Bull X, downhill series, right? we're
Yes.
talking we're talking
Yes.
like, like more normal trails. I mean, you get with someone like SDK, or I know Dominic, these guys, love the whips and stuff like that,
Yes.
pulling the jumps. But realistically, pushing hard on trails, having some fun. But that level of training, has worked out really well for us. It breeds both the competition. It does tone it down if you think about from a safety perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, yeah, I think you can, there's still enough damage you can do riding mountain biking.
Yes.
Trust me, I know I've broken a few minor bones and
Because you don't just
uh,
talk about it, you are about it. Because I follow you guys on Instagram. Like I said, I stalk you guys. I'm a dork like that. I stalk you guys, and you don't just talk about it. I saw the picture of you and SDK riding in the rain, and you got the training. I think it was your second ride that day, and you guys were riding in the rain. And
yeah.
and I whatever. But you don't just talk about it. You get in there and you do it. That's 20 there and do it. And what I want, and other than the mechanical aspect of what you're talking about, that scientific approach, let's talk about that mental approach, because one of your clients is Sean Dillon Kelly. And if you haven't seen him, Sean Dillon Kelly, to me personally, and I love Brandon, and I think it'd be great to juxtapose those two. They get along. They're great kids. They're great kids. But Brandon is, more like, to me, he's like a rebel.
Yeah. I mean, and I used to work with Brandon a little bit before too, so I know them both pretty well. I think
I love
Brandon's a
them.
good kid.
To me, they're great for the sport. And they're both young kids. And like I
Yeah.
said, they're both a little bit different. Where Brandon's more like, you'll see him on his Instagram. He'll be doing a wheelie on a Vespa with a Hawaiian shirt. And SDK's got that $1 million smile, that just that matinee model looks. He's a mama's boy. He loves his mom. Mom was in Victory Circle at the Park Ferme last weekend when he won. He loves his mom. He's got a beautiful girlfriend. He lives the kind of life you go, man, this kid's got it all. And he's a winner. And if he wins a championship, I think the sky's the limit for this kid. I mean, who wouldn't want to be on his team? He's got it all. But here's the thing about this I want to ask you about during when you're coaching is Richie Escalante has had his number, not all races, but pretty much for the whole season, except for he crashed in one race, but to finish first you got to finish. Sean, he did what he had to do. He won that race. But how did you coach him mentally when Escalante was beating him every week. I mean, it was every week. It was just basically those three, and it was Escalante and Sean Dillon Kelly, and Escalante was beating. Even if he was leading. It's like Escalante said, "Okay, it's time," and he, would beat him toward the end. And how did you get him to overcome that mental hump to where there's a point sometimes an athlete reaches, I got to beat this guy. And when they don't, they kind of go, okay, I guess I can settle for second in a way. How do you get him over that hump? Or is he still
Well,
battling that hump?
I think actually it's option three that you didn't mention. Um, SDK is a champion, and champions know that they've got to take each battle the way it comes.
Yes.
We've been working on that with him since the very beginning. So he's worked with me exclusively since he was 13. I think his mindset. Of course, we have our individual conversations about each race, and the performance and what's required and what's needed. But I also know him well enough that there's races where he's been fully on the limit, and sometimes you come in second.
And what do you say to him in situations like that where he's doing everything he can and he just came up short? Or do you not? Or you just let him what do you say? Say he comes in second and you saw him pushing it and it just didn't work out. What do you say in situations like that?
Yeah, I mean, in those situations, it's you know, you sleep well at night when you give 100%,
Right?
right? And that's something that we talk about all the time. Um, we really take our preparation really serious. So we know that we give 100% in preparation, and he knows that if he gives 100% on the track, then those two things, there's nothing more. The results will be the results because this is racing, no? And to me, it's I think where we find the synergies of my previous life. It's kind of like combat. You can prepare and you know what you go out for, but you can't necessarily write the script, right?
That's beautiful. I love because I was going to ask you about how did you find, and I just love that word. How did you find the synergy between military and motorcycle racing or just athletics in general? And when did that click for you, or was it already there for you?
Yeah, I mean, the click for me was definitely with this sport. No? The the world of racing at the top level is definitely a battle, and we know that the ultimate things can happen in this sport,
Yes.
and because of that, the approach, and I learned, working with Sean, that what these, even at his age, at 14, 15 years old, having to deal with the loss of a rider, that at it's also a young age, um, then I realized then, that it was pretty serious, in a way that I could relate to,
Yeah.
and that was something that helped us click, and then I knew, okay, if this is the level, that we have to have the mind prepared to deal with, then this is the type of training that is needed to follow.
Like, have you ever done any mental? Like, I was watching Michael Phelps, and he said his coach sometimes would hide his goggles, or he would put water in his goggles to just try to screw him up for his training, so he could get ready for it, just in case when it came out to the Olympic final and everything wasn't going. Wasn't 100%. Like, he wouldn't freak out. He got him basically every worst case scenario in practice. He did for him. So when it came time. And something, say during the course of a race, or the gold medal, the gold medal swim or whatever, like he wasn't bothered by maybe his goggles doing this, and his goggles filling it with water, and he could. Have you ever done those kind of mental approaches with Sean Dillon?
I think what happens within motorcycle racing is you're looking at an elite athlete who, especially early on, they reach. I always challenge his comfort zone for sure.
As in how? How do you do that? How do you do that?
We've done it in water training. We've done it in different types of military styles of training that I've taken him through just in a way, because when someone's that good at their own sport, it's not that sport that's going to challenge him in a certain sense. No. So to get him out of his own comfort zone, for me, it's a lot of it's creative. It's understanding the athlete that we have.
Well, I
But
want to know, because I want to do that kind of
yeah.
training. Because I still think I'm an elite athlete. So I want to know what it is,
Yeah.
because I want to do it when I go back to my gym.
Yeah, well, I mean, by far a lot, and he'll tell you, he'll be one to have on your show for sure. Um, you know, a lot of it's outside the gym, but you know, when we talk about it, for him, it's been a step-by-step process, right? So learning how, you know, fundamentally how to move properly, how to you know, then add weight to that movement, right? You know, in traditional gym training. And then things like explosive training and power training and movement training, learning how to run properly. Uh, uh, all of the athletes that we work with now, even in America, you know, learning how to properly take care of themselves, right? With mobility exercises and flexibility work, things of that nature. So I think performance in general,
Right.
and Sean will be, any of the guys will tell you, my goal is to build them as athletes. They just happen to be really good at riding motorcycles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what I'm really good at is understanding movement dynamics, and what is needed. But all in all, it all comes down to capacity, right? So what you're speaking about from the mental side is mental agility. And we have a whole protocol around, you know, taking people through that. There's different than Michael Phelps' coach. You know, we're more methodical about our approach.
Yeah.
The idea is that we run through our pre-race sequence multiple times.
Like, okay, what is that? Like, doing what? What's your pre-race sequence? Like,
Yeah, so each rider kind of goes through, you know, starting from, we have a physical warm-up period that lasts about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on first session in the morning, and a little bit more longer because usually it's the morning. But once the guys get going, the warm-up is usually around 30 minutes or so. But with about 25 minutes to go, most of the riders will go into kind of their own sequence, and they have a sequence that they go through that's a number of I would say statements and or questions, you know, that they're self-asking themselves, or they kind of already predisposed. There's some visualizations that they've already mapped out, or we've mapped out with them, of what they're working on. And then they're going through their actual race lap visualizations. And that's a sequence that sometimes is twice, depending on the race start procedures. So under a full race start procedures, if they have longer time, it might happen 3 times.
right.
Under the quick start procedures that we're doing now with Motor America, it's generally happening twice. So that's something that each rider kind of goes through on their own. And with SDK, if there's sometimes there's video of us with like the hammer down video. They've seen where he's going through his visualizations, and I'm standing like by him. Those things happen pre-race pretty much all the time. But what we do from a performance perspective is that 20-minute sequence,
Right.
or so. Like, we actually go through that via Zoom, like this.
Really?
Before every race.
Really?
Multiple times.
I think that part is fascinating. Like, they showed a video of every time on the MotoGP, is Moto3 was Philip Ertl, and he would have his eyes closed, and you see him going through the turns, and you can see he's visualized, and it's one of the most incredible things ever. He's got it down to a T, to where he's going this turn. You see him clicking with his hands, eyes closed, and he's going through this turn, and it's beautiful. I mean,
we measure. So we've done it with brain sensors on Sean, but he also kind of measures it down to the lap time.
Yeah.
So he'll start a song and then you kind of measure and then stop the song when he finishes. So we kind of have a target. So sometimes we're looking at making sure that we're not rushing. So a lot of it's
Okay.
breathing. So we'll look at how a rider is breathing. So to make sure that it's actually the hard part is slowing it down. It's not speeding it up. It's not reaching the lap time like you're going to be too slow. The hard part is actually slowing it down so you're not faster than what you're actually going to be.
Really? I love
So
that part. I love that mental. And I think breathing is a big aspect. I think taking yoga has helped me big time and just getting out of sketchy situations on the street and on the highway to where I think I would normally go freak out. I just go, I take that breath. And even when it's close calls, I think that's helping me. And because I saw that video you did, and I thought it's the breathing. The breathing helps so much in situations
yeah.
like that. And especially in that form of racing, a high level, it's got to help. Like, do you guys do anything like a yoga training or anything like that?
Well, what happens is during our preseason camp and during our in-season program for our riders that are working with us, we actually do breath training in the evenings,
Okay.
usually a couple times a week. So we monitor the training, and then we do it for like a 5-minute test with the monitoring system that we use, and then we help teach them basically how to diaphragmatic breathe. So the same thing that they're promoting with your yoga practice, but we just teach it from uh, certain sequences based on their age,
Okay.
um, and and then how to work with that relative to um, we kind of have a breathing strategy, if you want to call it. So there's like what you do on the grid versus what you do on the straightaway versus what you do on
Really?
corners. Yeah.
You breathe
So
differently.
there's different breathing strategies.
Oh, it
Um,
comes down to it. See, that is beautiful. So it's all the little things. It's
yeah, I
all the
mean,
little minute things.
you got to understand, if if you can win at 0/100th of a second, right?
Yes.
Like, then every part of your physiology is just as important as every part of the
Yes.
mechanics of that motorcycle,
Yeah.
because the your ability to you know react to something, your ability to manage and control, comes down to fine tune.
Yes, it does. And so you
Yeah,
know what? Someone switch gears. I want to get down to the to the. I like always like a little gossip. And I remember I was talking to you. We hit each other up about what to talk about, and I
yeah,
said, you know what? I know one of your clients is Maria Herrera, and I
yeah.
love Maria, but I also love Anna, and I know they have a little bit of history. I mean, I could tell that when I don't even know like the ends, but I just from watching with the naked eye when they're both in World Super Sport 300, like each other. You know what I mean? Which I thought was kind of funny. You get two women at the top of their class, not just because they're women, but they're at the top of their class. They happen to stand out because they're women. And I just don't think they like it because you. So I just want to go with the gossip aspect of it. I like that little TMZ part of it if I can. And I don't want to. I don't want to cause anything. I don't want to cause a rift in the paddock. I don't want Maria go. I know you ain't wearing them boots with them tires. I don't. I don't want nothing like that happening. I don't want no
No,
Cardi B kind of thing going on in the paddock. But what's the rift between Anna and Maria?
honestly, I can't even really speak on that. I mean, so Maria and I have a professional relationship. Helping support her quest, and yeah, I don't. I that's something that's more visual than it is really realistic. Um, I think the pathway for them has been, I think as we were talking, I think it's just different. Anna's in a great program with Kawasaki, and she's been able to develop within that program.
Right.
She's definitely a champion. She's definitely a great rider.
Oh, definitely.
And I think with Maria we've had some great opportunities. Some of them have been good for her, and some of them just haven't been the best situations. But she's proven time and time again that she's definitely one of the best in the world. She just had a wild card this past weekend, and
She got
was
15th, I think. Wait, 14th or 15th in the first race, right?
she was 14th and number 2 for the European Cup standing. So and that's just a wild card, never being on that bike before, right?
Exactly. Maria's. I mean, she's practicing with the boy. She's just as good as anybody. I heard when it comes to the dirt track training or whatever. Maria's just as good as anybody. And I want to ask. I asked Steffi Bow this last week, and I was talking about what's the difference between girls and boys, and she goes, in motocross, it's simple. It's just the simple strength. In motocross, where the boys have that man strength, and she goes, where girls can be as successful in road racing. But I said, this is from the naked eye. I'm gonna say right now, I'm speaking out of my ass from what I see from my naked eye. Anna's great. If she gets the lead, she's great at managing that lead and taking it home and getting the victory. But where I find out, and maybe in both of them, is when they get in the packs, and this can go for the boys also, but I just specifically speaking on those, when they get in a pack, that's when they have the troubles. And I was like, is that a thing where you think it's a female thing, a physiology thing, or do you think it's just a racing thing? I know it's when they get in pack racing, when it's a pack, Anna can get roughed up a little bit, or she can lose her way. If she gets the lead, she gets a second or two lead, she's good. But if she's in a pack and it's like, and I think Maria a little bit the same, at least from what I saw. So is there something to that? Is there validation in that? Or am I just, I don't know what I'm talking about?
Well, I think you can look at that. Obviously, they're racing in different classes as well, no? Right. So
right.
Maria now.
But even in World Supersport, I noticed that when they were in World Supersport.
Yeah, and I think some of it is obviously there's always going to be a difference physicality wise, right? So the energy expenditure when you're battling with someone versus when you're riding by yourself, right? You're going to fatigue faster, right? So if you're just dealing with one human body with a muscle mass of X and another human body with a muscle mass of Y that is less than X, right? And those two people are in a battle. At some point in time, the person with less muscle mass is going to fatigue faster than the person with more. That's just human to human. It's nothing to do with male or female.
Okay.
Right. So that would happen if you had a smaller male rider versus a more fit male rider. With that. So I think it's less about the physiology from a gender perspective.
Okay.
Let's put right. Okay. Then it is a physical sport, and as the bikes have gotten faster over the years, it has become more and more physical. I mean, I know, working with Sean, the demands of, what he goes through on the 600, right, and how much we train for him to be able to do that, right? So if that's one just reference mark, it's not a benchmark, but it's a good reference mark, right? Then I can tell you that it's just hard across the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
To be at an elite level. So I think when you look at that, it is one thing that you can see, right. But also the different levels of bikes and how bikes are, and where you're racing and all these different things are all different. So, for example, now, Maria's been on the Moto E for 2 seasons now, right? Jumps on a 600, right, and is able to put a 600, right up there in the points, right? Because her body is now adapted, right? She's stronger. Right. She's now adapted. That Moto E bike has very much a lot of torque, right? And it's hard on braking. It's a very physical, not very loud. It's just very physical.
Yeah.
Though, right. So after riding that bike, she's been able to adapt to a 600 pretty quickly, right? So a lot of that, if you take Anna right now and throw her into a 600, she probably wouldn't do so well because her body is just not ready for that. Yeah. Right. She'd have to train for that, and but at the same time, we sometimes in America also think of racing as this singular linear scenario, right? And we forget that, like, Anna could go down as like one of the greatest 300 riders ever, right? Just staying in her class and becoming dominant in that class, right? like there's that impetus to have to always move up, right?
Right.
Is something that is an American thing. Yeah, of course everyone has certain dreams and whatever, but
Right.
you also see riders in every class that seem to really fit that class, and then they just make a career out of that class, and
Like
if they
Tom
want to be
Luthi
the
in Moto 2.
exactly
Tom Luthi
exactly
stays there. He's got a
somebody
house
that
in
just
Moto
can't
2. He got
right.
a summer home Moto 2, winter home in Moto 2. That's his thing. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you do. That's what you do. Nothing wrong with
Right.
that.
And
You see what Sufaglu did sport. And I mean, Sufaglu, you couldn't mess with Sufaglu. Keenan and World Super
yeah,
Sport, good luck
exactly.
on that.
Exactly. So, I think that's where also it's hard to when people start having conversations. It's easy with the female conversation because in the world championship level,
Right.
you're talking either about Anna or Maria.
I didn't want to. I hated to put it against each other, but there was only two.
But
That I mean. So yes or
that's
no?
the unfortunate side. But the reality is just like any other rider, you really can't compare them, right? Because
Of course
right,
not.
because
But yes or no? Is there beef between them?
not that I know of. Not that I
Are
know
they
of.
Facebook friends?
I'm not on Facebook, so I wouldn't know.
Okay. Okay. Look, let's have some fun before we close it up here.
Yeah.
In the paddock, whether it's MotoGP, whether it's Moto America, just motorcycle racing period, who's the strongest mentally of any rider you've ever seen? The strongest mentally of any rider you've ever seen?
Oof. I mean, obviously, if you've been in the same paddock as Mark Marquez, it's kind of hard to argue that he's not the most dominant, like mentally. But as far as I think honestly, really, when you see blips of riders' mental faults,
Yes.
but in the gross comparison of how many riders that try to make it to that grid of 27 or 28 or 23, right? Like all of those guys are awesome, right? Like you really can't. The worst guy on that grid is better than anyone you know.
All of them are world
Yeah,
champions. One class or another. And to me personally, I always say it's Marquez. And the example I always use is he's in the box before the start of one of the FP1, FP2, whatever. And he's looking over, he's getting his gloves on, and the camera's on him. So he realized, he looks at the screen, he realizes he's on the screen as a camera, and he picks up the remote control and changes the channel. And that's when I went, wow, this dude is wired different. And it's great. Did him, and also, like you said, every one of them, but from my point of view, Marquez is one of the strongest mental athletes ever heard. I put him up there with Michael Jordan. And I don't think motorsports gets the credit it deserves when it comes to athletes. And
not at all.
Yeah, and
I mean, we've been building. I mean, people, privately, you'll look at, I think, when people look at Sean and go, okay, he's a professional, he's strong, and we look at Mark and go, okay, not because, numbers don't lie, right?
Right.
The championships keep racking up. The amazing things that he keeps doing just keep racking up, and like you said, he's super focused. And if you have a young athlete that wants to be in this sport, there's many great riders, but he's obviously the one who's a model of the sport right now.
Okay. Also, I want to ask you, what can and can't you teach a rider? Like, sometimes you see see him do something, you go, okay, you can't teach that. It's just natural. Or what things do you go, you can teach? Like, all right, I taught him that, and now he's better at that.
So I think skill development. We break almost any component down to it. I think what you can't teach is everyone has an innate ability, and a lot of that's going to help with their adoption of the skill. Right. So you can't teach whatever that innate ability is, right? And that for different riders, it's different things. Some just were naturally just good at like riding. Some just were naturally like fearless, right? They might have sucked at riding, but they were just fearless. And so they eventually it came together. Some were just naturally good at riding. Some were just naturally good at riding, and like the skills so good, like
Yes.
the fear just came along, right? So it just some were like bumbling, fumbling, the whole 9 yards, and then like boom, then they become a rider all of a sudden, right? So you don't know really how they got there, but like
Yes.
that little first step, I think, is the step that you can't really teach.
Right.
I think most of everything else is teachable. I think the skill is teachable. I think you find the kid who can go fast. You find the basic skills. I think as an athlete, if you teach them fundamentally how to be an athlete, how to become a professional, how to learn, how to be a lifelong student, how to take care of themselves as an athlete first. Mm-hmm. I think all those things come together, and if they have the skill and the aptitude and the drive, and they really want it,
yes,
the opportunities have to come, right? And that's where most don't. But you also have to be prepared for those opportunities, right? And when they do come, you need to be able to step up,
pounce on them,
and make the most of them.
and be
and
ready.
the riders that do, sometimes something special happens.
All right, and before we get out, what's the overall goal for you? I know you got that academy. I saw the drawing in Miami, and it's beautiful, man. I honestly, I can't wait to go in there and just bug the shit out of you like I do with everybody that I've ever come along with. I just annoy people enough. They go, okay, if I give you this interview, would you leave me alone? I go, yeah. So I appreciate you doing this. And when the Miami, I want to go down there and I want to ride on it. I know, I never say I'm too old, but I think, as far as teaching me and being on a team or whatever, maybe, just teach the young kids. I think I'll be okay. But what's your overall goal that you want to reach, the pinnacle? I know everybody should set goals for when they, monthly, yearly, weekly, whatever. But what's the pinnacle of the goal that you want to reach now?
Well, I think the goal for me is pretty simple. We're gonna make this model into a full-on academy. I think a school in the U.S. where we actually have a high school, a junior high, and a high school program, to include some type of college program, and then we're working with also some graduates from the Menlo Repsol School for Mechanical Engineering. So, talking about putting together a master's program. And again, that's part of that educational aspect of it, and where this sport is great and it's a sport, but not everyone's going to be able to be a Sean Kelly, right?
Yes.
But giving people access to it, finding the passion, maybe connecting education to it as an academy, as a full-on scenario. That's something that we're working on. Of course, we're doing this in multiple locations around the world. So it fits my umbrella. Our goal is to positively impact 1 billion people. It's our company motto. So there it is. One step.
I think that's beautiful, man. And I honestly, and with the military training and all that you've accomplished, it will be done. It will get done. I have no doubt about that. And I can't wait to bug you in the paddock again. This guy ever leave me alone? I can't wait to see that and bug you and be on the grid. Maria go, oh God, not him again. I can't wait for that day to happen. And honestly, I know you're a busy man with everything going on, so I appreciate you taking the time out to do this to talk to me. Honestly, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to your academy, which is the Pilots Racing and Developmental School. Anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to plug?
No, just obviously you mentioned a lot of the riders. Shout out to Maria Herrera, Sean Kelly, Noam Lampkin, Dominic. These guys are doing their thing this year. All of the Team Hammer, M4 Suzuki guys, Tony Elias, Bobby Fong, working really hard. Give me an opportunity to work with those guys, some great professionals. So we're having fun. We're enjoying racing, and hopefully doing it bigger and better in the future.
Well, I'm going to have Pretty Boy himself on here. I can't wait to talk to Sean Dillon Kelly. I can't wait to have the All-American kid on. It's going to be my pleasure. Not next week. I know he's got to get his mind ready mentally next week for the race, but I'll probably have him on the week after if that's okay with you, Coach, if that's okay with you. So, man, again, Michael, thank you so much for everything. Thank you for spending your time with time. I appreciate this wholeheartedly. I really do. I wish you nothing but the in life and with the academy. I really do. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate your time. And to everybody for watching, Tales from a Gemini's BT and Michael Torres saying, like we always do about this time, bye.